That's a beautiful
You're scared.
dress.
You want to say it in the mic? I came prepared. What do you want to say about the dress?
Oh, well, she look exactly like my mama.
That is a compliment.
Yes.
It's an enormous compliment. I said this just a few hours earlier. I'm filled on the floor of the House when we had a moment to be able to thank Senator Cornyn. He's in the congressional record in the floor of the House. When I thanked him and began to call out the names of so many, I said, in tradition of the black church, I am filled. And as I have come here today, I am filled. Anybody understand that? I'm filled. In this moment of history, I am filled. Let me thank Sheridan Lawrence, Sam Collins. Let me thank this mosaic of people whose tradition of life is different from mine. We thank Commissioner Ellis for his wonderful love of art. And of course, Representative Ron Reynolds, who hails from up the road. Let me thank the mayor of Galveston, the Commissioner Holmes, and a multitude of individuals, elected and non-elected, for this gathering here today. Let me boast a little bit to acknowledge that Reginald Adams is the seed of 3rd Ward. And the layers of grandmothers and others have watched him become an international and national renowned storyteller through the visual arts. Is he not, with his team, genius that is the descendants of enslaved Africans? That is Reginald Adams. So Sam has allowed me a little moment, just a moment, and I cannot help but share with you what this day is. And not out of boasting. My sorors are here too, and they need to see the green. That's my Alpha Kappa Alpha, thank you, sorors, and others, but thank you, sorors. I do want to let you know sometimes the ugliness of the legislative process. Sometimes the news reports makes it seem so easy. It was not introduced first in February 2021. We've introduced this bill. I was the first to introduce the holiday part of it. But we've had members like J.C. Watts and various others who did resolutions, and we did resolutions. But we knew that the time had come for the bill. But remember, when we did resolutions in the House, I had to walk around and knock on doors. A resolution is a congratulatory message to get people to co-sponsor it. And so there's a process that one does not know, and it gets built up. Why? Because we're in this place called Galveston, a hallowed place where you never stop. Al Edwards didn't stop with the state holiday. That's what we have to understand, this emancipation, liberation, and freedom. As John F. Kennedy said, freedom is not free. So that process was not easy, nor was it easy to get a unanimous consent, because any one of you, as a United States Senator, could have stood up and told Senator Cornyn and Senator Markey, not today, not today, of which they had done before. But garnering the bipartisan support, individuals who may have never come to Galveston, who were hesitant to say the word slaves, were educated enough to think you had said the word over and over again, Juneteenth, 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 and by some way, 47 states had been celebrating it, and those senators might have said, you know what, I have seen a celebration. I have been to one, and I live in Massachusetts. Or my Republican friend who managed the bill in Pennsylvania, and I said to him, the Union Army and Gettysburg is as much a part of Juneteenth. They were grateful for that encouragement. And so I declare and proclaim that America has just gotten a gift. They have the ability now to call themselves the supporters of the Juneteenth national holiday. This is America. And America is a combination of the mosaic of our heritage, a British gentleman here who was part of the transatlantic slave trade. So let me just quickly say this. As it came to the House, we had to run to get the papers from the Senate. What is that? You can't get anything going unless you put papers over in the House. You had to run and get them. Thank you, Senator Cornyn, for having some legs, and your staff was running too. But anyhow, we did procedural things that should not be told, but we did this bill in 6 hours on the floor of the House. Rule, debate, and the vote. Something about that word, Juneteenth. And on top of that, as I was in the chair, I can tell you I was having an out-of-body experience. It was almost like this mural, how beautiful it is, because the numbers kept coming. Because the reason we had to do it the way it is, because they said you weren't going to pass. We're not going to let it pass on suspension. We're not going to do a UC. And I kept saying, am I going to faint in the middle of the vote? The numbers kept coming. They kept coming. They kept coming. They kept coming. They kept coming. We haven't seen these numbers. 415 of men and women of the United States Congress voted for the Juneteenth holiday. 415. Something about that word called Juneteenth. Somebody knows that song. There's something about the name called Jesus. There's something about the name of Juneteenth. So let me quickly come to an end on this story. What I hope this gift is. What I hope this gift is that we will now do this unafraid deep dive into a history that rarely is spoken of. That we will understand that in essence, in the 1700s, slavery fell out of favor because you weren't a good market. Nobody was interested. In 1808, the United States banned the international slave trade. But then agriculture ceased to be profitable, but the selling of domestic slaves became a cash product. You became the cash that was being utilized mostly in the South. You help people make money. Everybody knows when it's your pocketbook, everybody's not worrying about how you got it, but you got some cash. You became popular domestically selling slaves. And then we had to give an excuse. Well, the reason why we have you is because you are inferior, but we're going to pay you through your food, to give you a house and clothing. That's going to make us feel good. Of course, the abolitionists still felt we were inferior, but they didn't like this thing called holding us. They didn't think it was benevolent to hold us. Can you see the clashing coming? Most of you don't know that. But then something happened. You know how we're so genius in America? We invented the cotton gin. And cotton became king. And guess what? No insurance, no workman's comp, no salary. Slaves made cotton king, built America, built the White House, built the United States Capitol, built the economic engine, built Wall Street, built again the transatlantic trade as it relates to cotton. We made America. Cotton was made on the backs of slaves. And so when this order came, with a little bit of humor, and as it was being read, it is important to take note of words which I will turn around and say as I come to a close. I always like reading these words from the General Order number 3. I always like to imagine myself being one of those standing in awe, could not read, most of us, and those that could read would not let anyone know because it was a crime. Here we are waiting. Some of us with our families that had not been separated. Some of us with tears in our eyes, wondering where our wife was and our children that had been snatched away from us. They were not here. But yet, we knew that the Union soldiers came for something. They'd already been to Mississippi and other places. We were so far south that they got to us in the waning hours. And among other things, the general read these words. The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation, people of Texas, we're about business. We're giving you an order. And we want no fooling around. We've come all the way from the Union and the federal government. We preserved the Union. We got a sense of power and order. You have no power against us, in accordance with a proclamation from the executive of the United States of America. That's why the federal government has to be responsive to its people. All slaves are free. Oh, nobody's hearing it right now. I know there's somebody got something wrapped up in them. Why don't you think about that when I say all slaves are free? This involves an absolute equality of rights and rights of property. What a genius Sam, Sheridan, and of course Mr. Adams. What a genius. Equality of rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection therefore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. These words. The freedmen are advised to remain quietly at their present homes and work for wages. Now, I don't know what our level of understanding was. Maybe we didn't know what an employer was. Maybe we didn't know what labor. Maybe we didn't understand wages. But I know what a few of them did understand. They understood that there was something called liberation, emancipation, and freedom. They knew there was Emancipation Proclamation, and they knew that they can get on that road, leaving Galveston, and get on that road to freedom. They didn't know about being an employee. They didn't know about staying in a place that had been brutal. They knew that they would grab those belongings, tie them up in whatever they had, put on something like this, get on that road, grab mama and grandmama and granddaddy, grab them whether they had been married to each other, they were family. Grab that baby that had just been born. Get on the road because we are free. That is what President Biden did on Thursday, June 17th, less than 24 hours after his landing from his fantastic international trip, less than 24 hours that we collectively as the Senate and the House delivered a bill that was enrolled to the White House to make this the very year after toiling, after Al Edwards toiled, after Opal Lee toiled, after you toiled, mama and daddy and people that you want to talk about, that you knew Auntie told you that story, you knew your cousin told you that story, you knew your friend and your pastor told you that story, and then after all of that, we signed that bill. I was filled. And then the genius of this artwork, the equality of rights. America, this is not divisiveness. We look to you as we move to George Floyd and voting rights and H.R. 40, the Commission on Study Slavery. This is not divisiveness. This says that race equity can be all of us, because if all of us have an equality of rights, America is and has been and goes to the pinnacle of her desires to create a more perfect union. I am filled today. Equality of rights. Thank you, Reginald. Emancipation, liberation, and freedom. God bless all of you. God bless Galveston. God bless those who came as slaves. And God bless the United States of America.